Hello, my name is Lisa Kelly, and I'm with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Discoverability Network and how you can profit from inclusion. What is the Discoverability? Just quickly, in case you've not heard of us before. Discoverability Network is a program of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, the indispensable partner of business, and the program is called Discoverability. It's available at www.discoverability.network. There's 3 parts to the program. The first is a free job matching platform that connects businesses to job seekers with a disability to meet business and workforce needs. Now, these are qualified talent, people with the skills and abilities and the training that you're looking for that can do the job, who also happen to have a disability. Second, we offer free training to employers, employment service providers, and job seekers on a wide range of disability and employment-related topics. And finally, we offer networking opportunities where businesses can connect directly to job seekers with a disability to build disability confidence, become comfortable working with a wide range of people with different abilities, and to identify high potential candidates that you may wish to connect with in future to recruit. Let's talk about disability in general and why this should be important to your business. The size of the market of Canadians with disabilities who self-identified, according to Statistics Canada 2017 survey on disability, is 20%. That's 1 in 5 Canadians, or about 6.2 million people. The most commonly self-identified or reported disabilities on StatsCan is pain, flexibility, and mobility. About 29% of people fall into one of those categories. The next most commonly reported, according to StatsCan, is 20% of people who self-identify as having a mental health disability. We break that down a little further, and about 29% of disabilities are visible and 71% are non-visible, meaning that a lot of these 1 in 5 Canadians are going to be people that you can't immediately look at and say, oh, that person has a disability. So that means we need to spend some extra time and thought in order to make our businesses inclusive. Why do we want to make our businesses inclusive? Well, because there's a lot of benefits. Besides, the fact that we're including 20% of the population as customers or potential employees, there's a cost savings. People with disabilities stay in jobs longer. So there's up to 72% higher staff retention. So when you think about the cost of sourcing, recruiting, onboarding, and training candidates, that's a lot of money that's saved. We know that working alongside people with disability also lowers overall staff turnover by as much as 30%. Again, significant impact on your bottom line. We know that people with disabilities, or employees with disabilities, rate 90% average or above average on job performance compared to people without disabilities. Employees with a disability compared to employees without a disability rate average or better on attendance, 86%. And 98% of employees with disabilities rate average or better on safety. So the proposition I'm putting towards you today is that you can have an employee who will, on average, stay longer on the job, saving you a lot of money in retention, who will be as or more productive, who will have as good a or better attendance, and who will work as or more safely than other employees. There's additional benefits. Like I said, you need to think about your consumer market. 1 in 5 Canadians has a disability. That means that 20% of your potential customers, may need changes to your workplace or your approaches or your products or services to be able to work better. We get those different perspectives when we hire candidates with a disability. People with disabilities also tend to spend more per shopping trip and shop more often. They're also less likely to be swayed by coupons or deals. So that's a great customer. Disability inclusive companies average 28% higher revenue, have 2 times the net income, and 30% better performance on economic profit margins. This is a really great value proposition for hiring people with disabilities. Diverse and inclusive companies actually make a lot more money and are a lot more innovative, as we said. So I've given you, these aren't specifically companies that we work with, but there's some great examples of companies that have benefited from being inclusive. So if we look at the top 2 and we look at Apple. Apple bought a company called Fingerworks that had a user interface that was created for people with mobility issues, with wrist injuries, and they used that to develop eventually their interface on their iPhones. Microsoft thinks this area is so important that they've actually embedded accessibility features into their primary software products, Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint. We've got companies like Sephora that are hiring people with disabilities in their warehouses. You can Google Sephora video, people with disabilities, and see what they're doing. Companies like Rockwell here in Canada are doing a great job of hiring locally, again, in their facilities to improve the job retention and still get the job done and done well. Companies like Tim Hortons. I'm sure many of you have heard of Mark Wafer and the success he had as a Tim Hortons franchisee who hired many, many individuals with disabilities and had some of the most profitable Tim Hortons restaurants across the country. And then we have larger enterprise level organizations like Sodexo who are doing a lot in this field. Inclusive companies, think about the customer journey. They enhance it. And I'm going to talk about that specifically in a moment. But what they want to do is make sure that everything from the start to the finish of the customer decision journey works for everybody. We also want to comply with legislation, but you can see that's the last thing that we need to pay attention to because we want to exceed standards in order to become better competitors. So again, a couple more examples of competitive products and services. So we have this amazing company called Oxo Good Grips, which if you have a kitchen or you cook, you probably used one of their products. They're these thick rubber handles that were inspired by the owner's wife who developed arthritis and had grip problems. Went back to the drawing board and they created these thick black handles, which everybody loves to use because if you're cooking in the kitchen and you've wet your hands or you're cutting up something that's slippery like a grapefruit, you want to have something that won't slip in your hand, and those rubberized handles work really well. So there's an example of a company that really spent some time thinking about how can designing for the edges, designing for people with disabilities work for everyone. Like I said, we talked about Microsoft and their products. And last but not least is Nike, who's developed this very cool shoe, Fly Ease. I think it's in about its 7th generation. It was inspired by a young man who had difficulty tying his shoelaces and asked Nike to design a shoe. And they did a wraparound shoe that would Velcro and has now become a new shoe that is hands-free that you can use. And I can hardly wait to buy one. So these are all companies that have been inspired by some of the barriers that people with disabilities face and have gone on to create products and improve their product lines with services or products designed for the edges. We can also benefit when we think about spaces and places. So over here, we can see a company called Lift Up, who's designed stairs that actually rise and fall and become a platform to lift mobility devices, or perhaps somebody who's pushing a stroller right up the stairs without taking a lot of space to build a ramp. I encourage you all to go look at the video online for Lift Up. It's amazing. We have on a lower tech, but still using that inclusive design approach, Stopgap Foundation, which has helped over 2,000 businesses create these ramps to allow people who use mobility devices, or again, parents or somebody pulling luggage, to get into their stores, and that can, at the end of the day, be brought inside so that you're not obstructing the sidewalk. You can visit them to order, and I believe you can even download plans on how to build one. And when we think of things like curb cuts or tactile strips that are very, very beneficial, and it shows us the value of thinking ahead of time. So before we pour that sidewalk, we think ahead of time about how to make that sidewalk work for everybody. Well, we can slope it down, add a tactile strip, and it doesn't cost us anything more. So I challenge you to think about where mismatches occur, which means that there's an opportunity to improve products or services or approaches along the customer decision journey. So I've broken this down into 7 different steps. So how do people find you? Are your websites accessible? Do you offer different ways for people to research and learn about your company? Or are you simply a storefront? Again, if you're simply a storefront, you're limiting yourself to local customers who are going to actually go in person on foot. So think about those people that may be in their homes, unable to leave or have difficulty leaving. So you could offer a website. Again, in COVID, this is particularly an opportunity. How do they evaluate? Are you making it easy for them to understand what you're doing? Are you using clear and simple language? Again, is your website sharing with people some of the details and the benefits of your value proposition? Do you make it easy for people to purchase? Right? So are they able to use multiple payment options? Right? Think about somebody who has a disability who may find it difficult to reach into a purse, find their credit card and pay, versus, if you accept an Apple Pay where they simply, tap their phone, how much easier that is nowadays for the tap systems. Again, it helps people with disabilities, but everybody uses that. Do you have telephone support, online options? Do you offer frequently asked questions? You want to make it seamless and think about those hard to service or harder to or different to service customers when you're designing that process. In terms of access, that's how people actually get the service or service. So is your built environment accessible? Is your customer service accessible? Does your frontline customer service staff understand how to serve or help people who experience the world differently? Do you have accessible parking? Do you provide information on disability and customer service? In the experience or use category, we're looking at things like, again, training your staff to be able to help people. Do you allow for hearing loops and hearing induction systems in your building? Do you have extra space for wheelchair or mobility devices? What's your policy on service animals? Is your signage available in Braille? You want to be thinking about the way that people experience or use the services. In terms of support, again, are we trained to answer a wide range of questions and experiences with a positive attitude? And finally, share. In this day and age with social media, people will share their stories about whether your business is accessible and whether you've been able to offer, an innovative and inclusive approach. So you want to be sure that you're considering all of that when you design your customer journey. We're here to provide you with training, toolkit, job matching platform. Thank you.